Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 22 playthrough of the New York Yankees. We are at the start of the 2031 season, and we quite honestly are at an impasse with ownership. They want us to rebuild and cut payroll significantly. We have other ideas. We have the second highest payroll in baseball, over 266 million, despite them wanting us to be at 180 million. And we are trying to win it all this year, despite them wanting us to rebuild. So probably does not bode well for our longevity as the GM of the Yankees, given that we are kind of in a 1-year prove-it contract with ownership at this point. But our goal is to win championships, and the Yankees can certainly afford a larger payroll than they want us to have. Interestingly, because our payroll is such a significant part of our budget at this point, our scouting and development budgets are both pulled down, significantly this year, which isn't going to be great for the development of our system over time. And we also have very little money available to sign our draft picks, so we'll probably be looking to draft some college-aged players who don't have particularly high salary demands because they don't have the option of going anywhere in their baseball careers. So we will see what happens on that front. Looking at the preseason predictions, for the third straight year, we are projected to win the AL East, but each of the last 2 years, Baltimore has beaten us. You can see in the simulation we were 14 games ahead of them with 108 wins, the most in the American League and the most in Major League Baseball. Hopefully we'll have a similar performance on the field this year, and we can actually get back to winning the AL East after the Orioles have taken the division the past couple of years. It would obviously be very advantageous to us to avoid that one-game wild card, which has tripped us up over the past couple of seasons. As the season gets started, our roster is pretty close to 100%. Walker Buehler is the big miss that we have right now. He is still out indefinitely with an oblique strain, and then we'll be sending him to AAA to do a few rehab starts before hopefully he can join us towards the end of the month. And then our utility infielder, Anthony Volpe, is also banged up right now. When Volpe comes back, we will have a decision to make whether we want to send Volpe through waivers down to AAA or perhaps make some room for him on the Major League roster. The obvious candidates, if we do want to keep Volpe around, would be to trade away or demote Blake Klassen, Chase DeLauter, or Jason Dominguez, who, other than Anthony Siegler, are the three position players who are not in either of our starting lineups against lefties or righties. Pitching rotation is pretty solid, headed by Javier, Hackenson, Edwards, McCullers Jr., and Hartle is in the rotation until Buehler comes back. So my hope is that if Buehler comes back, we've got a really good rotation that I think can hopefully help us do well here in the regular season and ultimately help us make a long run in the postseason, since we are probably literally general managering for our job this year. We're obviously going to be way over budget, so the only hope of keeping our job is probably to have a long playoff run and most likely need a World Series victory. So that is the goal as the 2031 season begins. Well, the Yankees are off to a solid start at 12-9, first in the AL East, which is good. Only a game up on Toronto and Boston and 2 games on Baltimore. Obviously, early goings in the season. Bad news is we just lost Cody Bellinger for about 5 weeks, so we will be putting Bellinger back or onto the injured list. Hopefully, he will be back sometime in early June. That will allow us to bring back from AAA Jason Dominguez, who we sent down there a bit of a while ago when Anthony Volpe came off the injured list. Dominguez still had options, and with the way his performance has regressed and his abilities have regressed over the last few years, that was what we decided to do. But it'll be good that he'll get to get a little bit of playing time now. We'll see how he can do up here in the majors with a new opportunity to hopefully get his career headed back in the right direction. And our Walker Buehler experiment has probably mercifully come to an end. Only pitched 12 games at the major league level last year, was 5-1 with a 3.23 ERA. You can see he made one start in Scranton for us this year and then came up to the majors where he's 1-0 with a 1.17 ERA, but just tore his elbow ligament. He is out for 9 to 10 months. We have a $15 million option on him for next season. Hard to imagine that, given that he is wrecked and will be 37 years old, and he's been such a disappointment since we signed him, that we'll be bringing him back. So disappointing to lose Buehler. Was hoping that he would be a big part at some point of us making a run in the playoffs, but obviously not going to be this season, and we will have to make do in the rotation without him. So the injury to Walker Buehler allowed us to bring up Euricio Castillo, one of the better prospects in our system. Did pitch 23 games last year at the major league level with a disappointing 5.28 ERA, but was pitching better in Scranton Wilkes-Barre so far. In 3 games down there, he was 2-1 with a 3.12 ERA. So he will be the first option to hopefully fill in for the loss of Buehler in the rotation for us. And with Walker Buehler out for the year and us very unlikely to pick up his option for $15 million for next season, wanted to see if there was anyone who valued it. And the Mets are willing to send us Octavio Becerra, a pretty decent left-handed relief pitcher, which we could use for the option to bring Buehler back next year. We're still going to have to retain 25% of his contract, and we're going to have to send 4 kind of lower-level prospects who I don't think have tons of potential along with him. But it will improve our budget on the margin and give us a little help this season, since with Buehler out 9 to 10 months, he's going to be of no use for us this year. So we weren't going to exercise the option anyways. We have to get rid of a bunch of prospects, none of whom I think were ever going to make it for us. But we get some payroll off of the books this year to make management slightly happier. And then we're also going to get a reliever who we think could help us this season. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. Fans not pleased with Buehler going, but fans were pleased with Becerra coming on. Still have very good loyalty and fan interest, so nothing to worry about there. And that actually has opened us up so where we have a little bit of money for free agents. Obviously not going to use it now. The main purpose of freeing up some money for Buehler was for the draft in this summer when we get to the amateur draft. Now, even though we only had $1 million budgeted there, we'll also have about $6.5 million that we cleared up by trading Buehler away. That hopefully we can use to have a more normal draft than what we were going to have to end up doing. So that is the move that we made. Going to need to figure out who we are going to send down to the minors to make room for Becerra on the major league roster. So we'll give that some thought. Likely will be Carter Benbrook, who has been up with us for several seasons, but still has options, and just as another lefty that has not developed the way we had hoped. So we're going to give Becerra the opportunity to take over for him in the rotation and see how the rest of the month goes. Well, we've made it close to the end of May, 28-19, up by 1.5 games on Toronto and 3 games on Baltimore. The age of our team is beginning a bit, I believe, to catch up to us. You can see that well, you probably can't see this because I'm not looking at the right screen, but on the injured list, McCullers going to be coming off shortly. Sellinger, our catcher, backup catcher, and then Cody Bellinger coming off. Going to send Jason Dominguez down to AAA again to make room for Bellinger, which will be a nice addition for us. McCullers Jr. should be back in a day. Seizo Murakami is banged up with a tired arm, as he always tends to be. So we're going to put him on the injured list. We'll bring McCullers back tomorrow, most likely. In the meantime, we'll bring up Carter Benbrook for at least a day to hopefully be an arm that helps us out if we need it. But, don't love the way the season is going. Most interestingly, Garrett Edwards having a tough season. And according to our scouts, he's down to just a 2.5 overall rating and 2.5 potential. You can see he's got slightly better than average stuff in movement, but his control is, average at best at this point, and really reliant on that slider with his fastball, sinker, and cutter, plus pitches and a changeup that doesn't do much. Hopefully with the 5 pitches he has, he can still continue to get batters out at the major league level. But you can see his ERA this year has spiked up to 4.96, and over the last 3 years, his ERA plus has really regressed significantly, and his WAR thus far this season is actually minus 0.1. So hopefully our scout is off and he will bounce back from this. It would be disappointing if at 29 years old his career is headed in the wrong direction already. Well, we've made it to the end of June, June 30th, almost the month of July. And we're half a game up on Baltimore in the AL East. So both of us have lost 3 in a row, but out pretty well in front of the rest of the division. And Baltimore is actually up 5 games for the wild card right now. But as we've talked about, really need to win the division this year and avoid getting into that 1-game wild card. Have not had good luck there over the past few seasons, and want to do everything in our power to avoid that. We'll have the draft coming up shortly, which will be interesting. As I mentioned, we now, with the trade away of Walker Buehler, have some money for free agents that we'll be able to use in the draft to hopefully bring on some talent there. The other option is obviously, as we get closer to the trade deadline at the end of July, to consider making a trade for a player who we think can have a big impact for us down the stretch. We are all in on this season, so really happy to, well, not happy, but more than willing to trade away some top prospects if we can bring on a player who can give us a little help, because winning the AL East is really our number one objective right now. And then the hope is that we can get into the playoffs and have a good enough rotation to do some damage. Well, it's the 4th of July, and we are now midway through the season, still up by half game on the Orioles in the American League East. Got our midseason review of the goals from ownership. Happy that we are playing well on the field, but very upset that we are completely ignoring their instructions to cut payroll. Reasonably happy with Jesus Mendoza as a prospect in our system, so that is positive. But they're upset with our progress towards our goals, upset of our on-field and front office management. If things don't start picking up, we may have to make some more changes to the head office. So not pleased with how we're doing, which is not unexpected when we're $80 million over the payroll they want us to be at. As I've mentioned, the goal is to go on a long playoff run, so every decision we make as we get closer to the trade deadline is going to be made with the hope of getting us closer to being a playoff team and winning the AL East. And if we get fired for spending too much money, so be it. And we are at the first round of the draft. I'm going to make a bit of a weird move here given how low we are on money to sign people with, and also the fact that we still may want to do a trade and use some of the little money we have to bring on some talent to help us this year. We're going to go with relief pitcher Eric Cody, but not really as a reliever. I don't think he's ever going to do too much as a relief pitcher. But as you can see, he's also got ratings at a bunch of infield and outfield positions. And when we look at his batting ratings, he's got some decent potential there. It looks like he could become a plus contact and gap hitter, an average power hitter, and really good at avoiding strikeouts. He's also only looking for $230,000 in bonus. So he's not a great leader and he's not that smart, but he does have a strong work ethic. The guy that our scout is recommending signing is third baseman Eric Jones, whose batting profile, he's got more power, but other than that, his batting profile isn't as good. He is only, a 18-year-old high school senior as opposed to a college player, but we're going to go with Eric Cody just on the reasoning that we don't have a lot of money to spend and he's cheap. Cheap probably because he's a relief pitcher, but we are going to immediately convert him and try to turn the bat that he has with pretty solid contact potential, good gap potential, and acceptable power potential, as well as a really good avoid strikeouts and decent eye into hopefully a decent major league hitter someday. Well, it's July 26th. We're getting close to the trade deadline, and we're half a game behind in the AL East. Looking at our team, we're in the top 5 in just about every pitching category or every batting category except for walks, and stolen bases and base running. But our pitching is a little more mixed. 7th in bullpen ERA, 11th in home runs allowed, 5th in opponent average against, 8th in strikeouts. Defense has been pretty good. I feel like on the margin we probably need a little more help with our pitching than our hitting. Not a ton of great options on the trade block, quite honestly, looking at the batters that are available. Francisco Lindor, Gabriel Moreno, Spencer Torkelson. Torkelson would be a potential option for us to investigate just for another bat for the lineup. Could definitely take over at designated hitter for us at the very least, if not potentially playing a little bit in the outfield, but got a pretty good bat there. So we'll work on him a little bit, but pitching, just not a ton out there that really gets us all that excited. A starter would be the optimal way to go. The best starter out there looks to be Samrath Singh, who's actually having a pretty mediocre season with Cleveland with a 4.57 ERA, a 106 ERA plus. You look and the pitcher has really good stuff and great control, average movement, and he's a fly ball pitcher. He is a lefty, which we could use, and he does have 4 decent pitches, pretty good stamina. But it's really kind of a situation where if you look at his career record, 106 ERA plus for his career, 92 FIP minus, he's a little better than average, and he is making a ton of money, $26.4 million this year and $26.4 million next year. So if the Indians, who are now the Guardians, I recognize, are willing to give him away, maybe we can add him. But if they're looking for a ton for him, unfortunately, I don't see that being a move that we would be able to make, because we are going to need a team that doesn't want too much and is also willing to keep a good chunk of their payroll. Well, it doesn't look like we've got anything near the prospects necessary to get Samrath Singh from the Guardians, so we are going to add Spencer Torkelson to the lineup. It's actually a bit of a painful trade for us, but we're playing totally for this year, so we're willing to make it. I'll complete the trade and then show you exactly who we gave up. It was a lot. definitely for a player who is going to be a rental for us, although he is signed, I believe, to next season also. But we had to give up right-handed pitcher TJ Saratelli, who is a pretty good prospect, 2.06 ERA in Scranton Wilkes-Barre. 23-year-old pitcher Joe Ashworth, who's only down in single A right now, but still has 3.5-star potential. Minor league shortstop Zachary Hutchins, and then a minor league third baseman Kevin Blount, who's in high A right now, batting .367, just a monster season, 15 homers and 84 RBIs. He was our second round pick just a year or two ago. Or actually, I guess more than that, back in 2020. So 2 years ago, he was our second round pick. But definitely has potential to develop into a plus hitter and a decent defensive third baseman. But we are all in on this season, so we are going to make the move. And what that will enable us to do is to send our key member of the old Columbus shuttle, which is now the Scranton Wilkes-Barre shuttle, down. Jason Dominguez headed back down to Scranton Wilkes-Barre, and we are going to put Spencer Torkelson on the roster, see what the lineup looks like according to manager Regi Corona, and Torkelson stepping right in as DH and cleanup hitter for us against righties, and same role against lefties for us. So hopefully the addition of Torkelson will help our offense, and we'll be able to just batter people with the Bronx Bombers as we try to win the division this year. And of course, on August 1st, the day after the trade deadline, Lance McCullers Jr. Diagnosed with bone chips in his elbow, out for 8 months. Didn't tell us what it was till August 1st, which is a bit of a bummer. Honestly, he's only started 7 games for us this year. He is wrecked physically and not what he used to be, so he has been primarily in our bullpen, even though we thought he was going to be a starter when the season started. But still not optimal to be losing another arm at this late stage in the season when there's not really anything we can do about it. I think we've got an option on McCullers for next year, or actually no, he's just a free agent. So unlikely that he will be back with us as a 38-year-old who is wrecked physically, coming off of surgery for bone chips. Maybe the end of the career for Lance McCullers Jr. And you can see as we start the month of August here, we are 2 games out of first. We were 2 games up, but in our last 10, we are 3-7, while Baltimore is 7-3. Hopefully we can turn that around. We're up 3.5 on the Red Sox for the wild card, but we would be a road wild card team against the Rangers if the season ended today. So our goal is to absolutely get the AL East and to wrestle it back from the Orioles here down the last couple months of the season. Well, similar to the last couple seasons, the AL East is getting away from us. It's August 18th, and we're now 6 in back of the Orioles. We are up 3.5 on the A's for the second wild card, but clearly, we're 10 games out of hosting the wild card game, so our best opportunity is to hopefully win some games down the stretch against the Orioles and make this thing close. We've got to win the division this year. Looking at our schedule going ahead, we don't have the Orioles at all here in August. In September, we do have a 4-game set at home in early September. And then it looks like we finish up with the Orioles on the road at the end of September into October, followed by a few games with Tampa Bay to finish the season. So still have 7 games against them. We're 6 games out. Hopefully by the time we play them in about 3 weeks from now, we can make up some ground before that pivotal 4-game series in the Bronx. Or maybe it just doesn't matter, as Jeff Hackenson, one of our key starters, even though he's had a rough year this year, diagnosed with an arthritic elbow, out for 4 months. Another blow to our rotation. Been a tough year injury-wise, but it is what it is. we'll figure out who we're going to bring up from the minors, and then do our best to plug the gaps in the rotation and hopefully start closing that 7-game gap that we have on the Orioles. But at this point, we're closer to being 500 than we are to catching the Orioles at this point, which is really upsetting. And we're only 3 games up for the wild card right now, so need to kind of turn this around immediately while there's still 42 games left in the regular season. Well, we've made it to September roster expansion, but we haven't done much to make ground up on the Orioles. You can see we're 70 and 60, still 6.5 games behind. We are up 4.5 for the wild card, so we'll be back in the playoffs most likely, but we really want to avoid that 1-game playoff, and it seems like for a 3rd straight year we're not going to be able to do that, unfortunately, which is extremely disappointing. Looking at who we have available to bring up to the majors with the roster expansion, looking down in AAA, Zion Smith could be interesting. Although he got bombed, he had a decent year in Somerset in AA. We brought him up to Scranton recently, and you can see he's hit 11.57 ERA thus far there. So probably not the right guy to bring up. We will bring Jason Dominguez back up. Hopefully he can be a useful bat off of the bench for us. And then our old friend Carter Benbrook, who at least has a little bit of stamina, once looked like he was going to be an important part of the Yankees rotation for many years to come. Doesn't seem that he's that player anymore, but we will give him a chance to join the major league team here down the stretch, and hopefully help the Yankees close the gap on the Orioles in that big series starting next week. Well, it's been another rough week for the Yankees. We are now 8.5 games out of first, beginning that 4-game series at home with the Orioles. Really have to sweep it to have any hope of catching them down the stretch here. We'll see how these few days go. Actually, sorry, I don't want to sim the entire game. I just want to quickly see what happens. And we won the first game 6-3, which is good. Lost 12-7 though in game 2. Lost 7-3 in game 3. And then we won 5-4 in game 4. So splitting at home, definitely not a great result for us. Still 8.5 games out, and their magic number is down to just 15. So not what we needed. It is what it is, though. We're going to be in a 1-game playoff again, which is not where you want to be when you are a team that is built to win it all, in your opinion, in your hope. And if you don't win it all, you're probably going to be fired. But we're going to do the best we can when we get to the playoffs. Well, we are in the final stages of the season. Baltimore has now clinched the AL East, so best case scenario is for us to be in the wild card game, and we are going to be on the road even if we are in the wild card game. We're up 3.5 games on the Tigers for the second wild card, so our magic number is down to 4. We do have some tough games against Baltimore ahead of us. Not that they're playing for anything at this point, but they're obviously a better team than we are, having beaten us in the AL East for 3 consecutive seasons at this point. Did get a win there, but of course, as this season just continues to go off the rails, Brian Reynolds out with a hamstring strain for 3 weeks, so he will certainly be missing the wild card game, and probably going to be out if we're able to make it to an ALDS. So it's gotten ugly with this team relatively quickly, which is unfortunate. Had high hopes coming into the season. Doesn't mean that it's all over yet, but it's definitely not trending in a good direction with the injuries that we're experiencing right now and the pitching staff that we have, which is our starting rotation in particular, kind of held together with duct tape at this point. I guess the only positive thing to say about the Reynolds injury is that we did make that trade for Spencer Torkelson before the trade deadline, and he's played well with us, batting .291 with 16 homers and 49 runs batted in. You can see for the season, 42 home runs and 122 RBIs combined between the Yankees and the Cubs, so he has been a good addition for us. Hopefully he can provide some offense in that wild card game in particular and get us into the ALDS. And after winning 2 games in Baltimore, we're at Baltimore for a 3rd game in a row, and we can clinch the wild card if we can win this game here today. We will see what happens. And, sorry, the game going slower than I had hoped. But if we can sweep this series on the road in Baltimore, not going to get us to the division, obviously, but at the very least it would be good to clinch the wild card now and then hopefully be able to, get the rotation set as we get ready for the 1-game playoff against the Rangers. But as you know, it's up to the manager how he manages the rotation. So I'll be hoping that Regi Corona makes some good decisions as far as what he wants to do over these next few games as we get ready for the 1-game playoff. And we did beat Baltimore 7-0, so we have clinched appearance in the wild card game for a 3rd straight season for us. Unlike last year, we're not even going to be at home, though. So tough task for us to go into Texas and beat the Rangers, but that's going to be what we need to do. And mercifully, the regular season is over. Yankees finished 90-72, 6 games behind the Orioles in the American League East. We are going to be in the wild card game in a couple of days against Texas on the 8th. It's the 6th today. So with that, we will call this episode a wrap and return with hopefully more than 1 game in the playoffs in our next episode, as well as a review of the regular season once the playoffs are over, and most importantly, finding out whether ownership is going to have us back for another season after we thumbed our noses at them with our massive payroll this year. Thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.